brought to you by
APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Aurifil. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing.
Havel's Sewing. When you need to cut it close, choose Havel's.
Moda. Make something quilty with Moda fabrics.
Hello out there in computer land, it's Quilty and I'm Mary Fons, and today we are going to work on a ubiquitous patchwork unit. It is everywhere. You will come across what we call flippy corners or diagonal seams method in your patchwork all the time. So let's take a look at how to do this, because once you get it down, you'll be like popping them out like popcorn. I don't know. So this is a rolling stone block. You've seen it before. I use it a lot in teaching because there's so many things to teach with this block. I've made a quilt using this block. I really love it. It's very old school. Like it's like, you know, from like 18 whatever. But it's very modern too, like so many quilt blocks that we know and love. So if you look at these corner units, okay, so this block is made up of 9 different units, okay? 9 different sort of patchwork units, and the corners are what we call a flippy corner method. Like it's using the flippy corner method. Okay, so I've isolated out here one of these little blocks, or one of these little patchwork units. Okay, so just so you know, in case you're a beginner, this is a block. The whole thing is a quilt block, and this is a patchwork unit. Okay, just so you know, you never know who needs that explained, and there's no shame in that, okay, if you need to know what that is. So this is a patchwork unit, and the way that we make this is deceptively simple. You might look at this and say, oh, you have to cut triangles, right, because you have these pink triangles on the outside and this red square in the middle. But you don't have to cut any triangles. You just have to cut squares. And whenever possible, it's better to cut squares than triangles, because triangles get funky. When you cut a triangle and you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance that you need, the math gets kind of weird, okay? So whenever possible, we like to do it easier, all right? So the way we do this is we take our square, okay, our center, the color that we want the center to be, and then we cut 4 little smaller squares, okay? And the measurements that I'm using, I think my middle square is 4.5, and my little outside squares are 2.5. But of course, you consult your pattern. It'll tell you, of course, what you need to cut, okay? So what you do is you put the right sides together, okay? And the diagonal seams method, when we call it the flippy corners method here, is that we sew a diagonal seam right here, okay? And then once we sew it, we flippy corner it back, okay? And we do that on all 4 sides. So what we're gonna do is make one, okay? Because it's really fast. Now, here's a tip. Just know that when you're sewing your diagonal seam, and on this, I actually think I'm gonna draw a line, because we are not, if it's a really, really small square, you can usually fire it through your machine without drawing it, but it's kind of hard to eyeball the center of that all the way across. So I'm actually gonna mark it. I think I can see my little white. It's really just for me, but I'm gonna draw a line, because that's my sewing line. Okay, yeah, I can see it just barely. So, so if you sew just to the corner, I mean, I'm talking like a few fibers, threads, widths, like just a scotch toward the corner of the unit, you'll get a more accurate unit. And that's because when you fold this back, when you fold this piece back, your thread actually takes up a little bit of space. So if you give it just a little bit extra, I'll show you what I mean, okay? You'll do better. Okay, I'm gonna go to the sewing machine. I can see my line, and the line that I drew is my sewing line. And so just a scotch to the left of that line, I'm talking like a millimeter, teeny weeny fraction of a millimeter, to the left of my sewing line is going to give me just a slightly more accurate fold back, because the thread itself that I sew, the stitch that I sew, actually takes up a little bit of space, okay? So let's take it to the pressing surface. Yeah, you did a good job, I think. Okay, and I'm going to trim my thread later. Will you hold this, monkey? Good, okay. So I'm going to press, set my seam, and then I'm gonna flip this back. Lovely, okay? Just like that. And then we trim off the back, okay? Because you don't need all this extra fabric here. So we're gonna trim that off with our scissors. and you trim it to 1/4 inch, right? Because you always want a 1/4 inch seam. But this is nice because you don't have to measure out a quarter. You know, you just snip it down to this, right? And it's not totally accurate, but it doesn't matter because it's on the back. I mean, that's a little, you know, I got a little groove in there, but it's okay because all you need to be pretty is the front, and you have plenty of seam allowance. So that's one of your corners. Now, we don't have time to do the whole thing, but this is another tip that's really important. Okay, the next one that you would sew, I would do the one right across from it, okay? Because what I did when I first started making these was I sewed down this one, right? Did this right there. And then I was like, well, I can just do all of them all at once. But you can't, because once you sew one down, okay, so you sew this. I'm gonna do this really fast because you need to see this, because it's a very common rookie mistake, and I'll show you why it's not possible. Okay, see, they go really, really fast. Okay, so if I left that down and didn't press it back and just put my next one down and was like, great, I'm really flying. I can do all this at once without getting up and going to the pressing surface, or I can just skip that part. What happens is you get a buckle. See what I mean? That's not gonna work. So you have to do one, press it back, and then do the next one, okay? And what you end up with is your little Flippy Corners unit. And just for fun, I made up 2 other examples to show you how many options you have with this kind of thing. This is the same size square, 4.5 inch red square, but these corner units are, I think they measured 2 inches square. So you get a very different shape. I did the same thing. I just sewed down the middle. I put the white square on, sewed down the middle, clipped off the back. That's a different shape. And look at this. I only did 2 sides, and I left the other ones plain. So look what would happen to our block, you know, if you did something like that. It's like a totally different block. So you'll see Flippy Corners all the time, and you should play with them and enjoy them, and, you know, get really good at them. And then you can teach somebody else, okay? So visit our website, heyquilty.com, go to qnntv.com. There's great stuff happening on the Facebook page. We do giveaways on the blog, so visit us and stay connected, because we really like to hear from you. Take care.
Quilty is brought to you by
APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing.
Hovels Sewing. When you need to cut it close, choose Hovels.
Moda, make something quilty with Moda fabrics.